Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, athletes made here. The Sports Performance Center was developed with one goal in mind: to maximize human performance through movement and recovery. Their team of expert performance sports coaches and trainers will guide you to achieve your performance goals. That's the Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, located at the Star in Frisco. This episode is also brought to you by Allen Dental Studio. Located off Bethany Drive in Allen, their office was designed with you, the patient, in mind, which means an excellent and enjoyable experience. From cosmetics to implants, you deserve a perfect smile, and Allen Dental Studio can make that happen. Also, don't want to leave out another longtime friend of the podcast, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. With locations in Carrollton and Dallas, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes offers an affordable, high-quality alternative to senior living. Call now at 469-400-7650. That's Texan, spelled T-E-X-S-E-N, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by the whole crew. We got Bryan Murphy, we got Kendrick Johnson, Devin Hasson, and Taylor Raglin. Everybody is here, and gentlemen, it is Monday, so let's talk some high school football. Week 7 is in the books, and as we're closing in on that home stretch, let's just kind of make sense as to where things are at right now, because we did have a few results last week that certainly rocked the status quo in our district, so to speak. Whether it was things that may have messed with the district title picture, the playoff picture, what have you. It was certainly not a week where we were on the, any different page or whatnot, because as Bryan, you and I opined on Thursday, we had the first ever completely unanimous picket line, i.e. the worst picket line in the history of the entire project, and boy guys, did we pay for it. It's only fitting that the 1 week where we're all unanimous on all 10 games was the week that produced our worst results of the season, as we collectively went 6-4. That's called karma. So a tough week for us on the picket line, but that's because we did have some results that were that kind of went against the grain a bit. So let's kind of go. Let's talk a little 6A first, then we'll get into 5A later on. As far as some of the games that really kind of rocked our expectations, including a couple over in District 9 6A, where you had.
I knew you were going to start there.
Why not, man? I mean, we'll get to Prosper Jesuit in a bit, but Kendrick, you had a game that spanned 2 days before a final score was decided as Plano took down McKinney. What was it, 56-49, in a game that was. There's so many different angles to this one. So you were there for the entirety of this thing. You didn't spend the night in the McKinney ISD press box or anything, but nevertheless, just what was the takeaway from a strange game at McKinney ISD Stadium?
All those teams, the Planos and the McKinneys, are all in the same boat. What happened was Plano jumped out to them. Props to them. They jumped out. They were scoring like every 2 plays. Tyler Hines got in action. I keep forgetting number 2.
Nolan Williams.
Williams did his thing. The quarterback was pretty pinpoint.
Oh, yeah.
And they jumped out on on McKinney too. It was 42-14. It's like, oh, not the Lions' night. It was actually the worst I've seen them under Coach Shavers. But to the McKinney form, they made adjustments in the halftime. They come back. It's 42-35. It's like a boxing fight. They got Plano wobbling, and then I see my man Coach Pratt, the athletic director from McKinney, run onto the field in his white jumpsuit, and then because we had saw a couple flashes, and they stopped the game, and that was the best thing for Plano, because McKinney had all the momentum. They looked at gas. There was a whole another 11 minutes left in that game. So we come back the next day on Friday, clear skies. They got the win at their backs, and they score on the first play. Nolan Williams does it again, hits them for a 56-yard bomb, and McKinney can never get that equalizer to tie it up. Kind of like the Cowboys-Jets game yesterday. They can never tie the score up, and that's why McKinney took the L.
It was really kind of a continuation of what's been one of the emerging subplots of the season for Plano, and that is the development of this big play passing attack. Plano,
it's legit. It's not fluke.
They're on pace to have their best year passing the football since 2008, and it's just when you add in, again, Oliver Towns, the quarterback, and the strength that he's a junior.
He's legit. I gotta see him play. He doesn't do nothing like overly dramatic like any quarterback, but he's very efficient. For Plano, with the way they run the ball, that's what they need, is a very efficient quarterback.
And they've got guys who can stretch the field. You mentioned Nolan Williams, Jaden Chambers, Taylor. You've seen him in the past do his thing. Christian Sabatini, their tight end, is another guy that can hit you. They just have much more. They've got so many more different weapons at the skill positions than they've had in the past, and that's to complement guys like Tylen Hines and Cody Christ in the backfield. It's a completely different dimension that teams haven't really had to be as concerned about with Plano in the past.
And with this being two different games, Plano won the game on third down. They converted a 15, 2 12s, a 6, and a 5. And on those third down plays, they averaged 28.6 yards a play. So that'll get it done.
That'll win you a football game.
So that was very key.
What's I know that McKinney didn't graduate its entire defense or anything. I know they lost some key guys in the secondary, and that's where perhaps this performance comes into perspective. But very, very surprising though to see those sorts of numbers posted. I mean, they played McKinney North earlier in the season, and North only scored 44.
Lowest total of the season.
Yeah, so it's it's a very, very, very bizarre outcome. But nevertheless though, it's a game that weighs now very heavily on the playoff picture in District 9-6A.
Look, I think to have a realistic chance to go to the playoffs, the Lions going to have to run the table. They got that daunting task. They got to see Prosper. No, they already played. They got to see Jesuits.
They got the two rough ones out of the way early. They saw Prosper and Allen to begin district. They have East, West, Jesuit, and Boyd to go. So it's all right there on the table. You have other teams that are in that mix for that. If we're going into the assumption that Allen, Prosper, Jesuit are the top 3 teams in the district, the race for that 4 seed, there's still plenty more games left that'll decide that. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of an unexpected result, I think, for McKinney and Plano. It's kind of weird because
I put my title lead was the tables turned, because last year McKinney beat Plano to get in the race. Yeah. I think Plano did the same thing this year, because if Plano beats East, they're all but in.
And all of a sudden now, Taylor, you could speak to this a little bit. Just the Plano East, Plano Senior game has so much weight on it now because, as down as we've been collectively on Plano ISD in the podcast, you look up and Plano's tied for third now in district at 2-1, and East already has a big win over Boyd. It's very conceivable that this could be a playoff eliminator on Friday.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is you talk about a team that's already gotten the rough ones out of the way. East is the same way. They took care of business against Boyd. Now you've played Allen and Prosper. Ideally with the bye week, and then a game against Allen. It's almost like a bye week. It's not, but a lot of things are different in a game like that. I'm sure they're hoping that Dylan Hayden feels a little bit better after that injury that he sustained in the Boyd game. I don't think he's been right yet. He's played since then.
Joey said after the Allen game that he just hasn't been the same since that hit.
So, if you're East, you got to be hoping that maybe this is the week that he really kind of feels like himself. It's his non-throwing shoulder, but running is such a huge part of what he brings to that East team that, I don't want to say that he's scared, but there's even subconscious, because he's a tough runner. He likes to mix it up. So subconsciously, you think there might be something where it's like, he wants to do it, but his body's just not quite there. So
he did get depleted. Like literally, he had both his feet went off the ground.
It was bad. But Friday, if Plano wins 3-1,
you're feeling pretty good if you're Plano then.
Really good, and you've beaten some teams that were supposed to be in the mix. And if East wins, you're sitting there thinking like we're right back in it. We're 2-2. We've beaten Boyd and Plano. We've lost to the teams we're supposed to lose to, whatever. But we're right back in it, and we've beaten a couple teams. Especially that Boyd win will look huge. If East beats Plano, because then it's like you've really taken out a couple teams that are right there on the bubble with you.
And if any of those teams can get to 4 wins, that's almost a shoo-in.
Yeah,
4 is the magic number.
It's going to be interesting Friday, I think, with Plano and East, just because that Plano offense. You get past the Allens and the Prospers, and now, you put up 56 points. But, that East defense, it's the opposite. They got blown out by Prosper and Allen. Like most teams are going to do, except for Jesuit, clearly, which I'm sure we'll get to. But now that East defense is good. They're solid. How are they going to respond to getting punched in the mouth by some of the elite teams coming back against the Plano team that everybody's hyping up? I'm sure most people are taking Plano in this game. But that East defense, if they can get... it's going to depend on what Kayvon Hamilton's status is too. He's been out.
And they're a little banged up in the secondary too.
Yeah. So those injuries could hurt them. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a huge one. The winner of this game, it's tough because Plano, I think, inserts itself into really serious playoff contender, like would have to mess something up not to make it at that point. But East, if they win, then both are 2-2, and we have even more chaos.
So bizarre. Like I can't imagine, like between the Plano West game and then the McKinney game. I mean, neither of these games are doing any wonders for Jadon McCullough's blood pressure. But nevertheless, I mean, they control their own destiny relative to a playoff spot. Which a few weeks into the season, it did not look like that was going to be the case.
And
but
I would take them over like Boyd right now. I would take them. I mean, they look good.
Fair play to Plano, man. Brian, you alluded to it at the start of the podcast, dude. What the hell happened to Prosper?
So when they beat Flower Mound and they beat McKinney, the key to that was good running game, and then they forced a lot of turnovers. Well, the opposite happened to Prosper this past week. The second play of the game, Jackson Berry throws a pick. Few plays later, Jesuit just runs down their throat. And that was the kind of the theme, especially early in the game. They just ran down Prosper's throat.
Yeah.
And it was 20-0 before you could even blink. After that interception, the next two Prosper drives ended in punts. And it wasn't even just E.J. Smith. E.J. Smith had 4 touchdowns. And we talked about it, too. You mentioned how Jake Taylor would be maybe the guy that they would have to worry about, and he rushes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Almost 7.5 yards per carry. You look at E.J.'s final numbers, and they actually did a respectable job against him on the ground, at least. He had 93 yards on 22 carries. I mean, less than 4.5 yards per carry.
When you're running the ball 43 times, for almost 300 yards, you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
And especially if you're forcing, some of those turnovers kind of happened once the score was kind of out of reach. But you can't give them good field position, and if you can't stop that run, that two-headed monster. And JT Lane, he was shut down, man. Prosper in the past, they've liked to use that running game with other guys, and JT Lane had 46 yards on 10 carries. A lot of that's because you're playing from behind. It's not ideal when you're down 20-0. In the first quarter, that's your game plan gets thrown out the window at that point. But Jackson Berry, I wasn't at the game, but he had he had lost a fumble in this one as well. So it's maybe trying to make plays happen once you're kind of kicked in the mouth, and that's a place where Prosper hasn't been.
No, first adversity they faced all season.
Yeah, no doubt. And maybe this could be what they needed. I still think, obviously, we all think they lose to Allen, later in the year, but. Maybe this game will help them, win more than just one playoff game. Who knows? Maybe we'll see. It might help them in November. Losing the way now, I think it was Diggs tweeted it. A loss in October could help them in November.
Well, because the reason why is because it would take them off of the side of the bracket in Division II that Longview would theoretically be on. So, when you don't have to see Longview until potentially the regional final, that's a huge win.
I was at that game last year against Longview, and that's not what they wanted.
So,
but state champs.
Such an uncharacteristic showing from Prosper in all areas. Like, I'm not sure what part of that equation is more unexpected. The fact that the defense allowed 41 points, or that the offense only scored 14 against a Jesuit program that, I don't know, traditionally just the MO's never been defense with when it comes to Jesuit, but that's to hold the playmakers that Prosper has, because they had all their horses. It was Jackson Berry, JT Lane, Tyler Bailey, Hayden Metcalf, and...
No injuries?
No.
They just got beat. I asked Matt, is it just injuries?
They just
clean beat them.
They just got destroyed.
Yeah.
Jesuit's just solid.
Oh, yeah. They're so efficient in what they do.
I've only seen them against Plano West, which, to be fair, they didn't exactly go all the way down the playbook for that Plano West game. But it's just a matter of, I think, they have enough around EJ to where, Jake Taylor and everybody else, even that passing game is fine. You have to worry about so many things, and they have so many just good, solid football players that they'll just efficient you to death. And they don't make a whole lot of mistakes. They didn't. It doesn't sound like against Prosper, and, you get rewarded.
I'm now just in it. Adds just another layer to this upcoming game on Friday between Jesuit and Allen, which now all of a sudden, I'm just curious to see how Jesuit builds off of this and what it looks like, and if they try to do the ball control, lean on the run thing, and try to keep that Allen offense off the field, and to what extent they can have some success with it. Because all the hallmarks of Prosper being an elite or upper echelon defense were there heading into this game, and man, Jesuit just exposed something in a huge way with
it seemed like Jesuit, their starting field position was with the interception, and then they forced a punt, and I'm seeing on here one of their Prosper's punt was 12 yards. It's some sort of fluky things, and when Jesuit's starting, near midfield or in Prosper territory, just give the ball to EJ, just give the ball to Jake Taylor, and you're up 20-0 just like that. It was just the perfect storm for Jesuit. I don't know. I wish I could have been there to see, exactly what went down, but it's kind of fluky, but kind of not. Jesuit's the real deal. I mean, are they going to compete with Allen? No.
At the end of the day, they are undefeated since they got E.J. Smith back from injury. Those 2 losses to Arlington and DeSoto might have thrown people off the scent when just looking at strictly their win-loss record. It's not like those are bad losses or anything. Yeah, they were respectable in both those games, even without E.J. Or maybe it was just the fact that we were all like kind of buying into the Jesuit hype last year when they were expected to be the second best team in the district, and then they let us down by finishing 7th. But they were banged up last year. Yeah. So I'm just
going to go ahead and think that Prosper tanked this game so they can avoid long. That's what I think. This is all on purpose.
Over in District 6A, there was a result that kind of rocked the foundation as far as the district title picture goes, and that was Marcus getting its biggest win in some time. They took down old Hebron 24-14 in a game that, oh boy, if you just look back to that, the only other loss on Hebron's record in that strange, confounding night against Arlington Martin, and where special teams did Hebron in early on. Wouldn't you know it? Special teams reared their head once again. This is they trade touchdowns to begin the game, and then after Marcus's first touchdown, Hebron loses a fumble on the ensuing kickoff. Marcus scores off of that. Marcus is feeling a little frisky, so let's try an onside kick. They recover that, and then wouldn't you know, it is 17-6 after the first quarter, and then this really settled into a defensive game. Neither offense cleared 250 yards, it was just Marcus being able to nurse that first quarter lead to the finish line. Some impressive stuff by the Marauders. Even in their only loss this season, I should say, against Arlington Bowie. I was at that game, and even though that they lost 28-14, you could still see the signs on defense that they actually had quite a bit, especially up front. I don't know, just in Hebron's offense has just run so hot and cold, it feels like, that it was just kind of, it was a very worthy effort by that Marcus defense to hold them in check. And now all of a sudden, Marcus is in first place. They're tied with Flower Mound, and you got the Mound Showdown next week. So if they can take care of business, albeit, that's, two tall orders this week with Marcus playing Capel, Flower Mound playing Hebron. If they can take care of business, though, we got the potential for the most highly anticipated Mound Showdown in quite some time. And then you had, Louisville over Capel. That result might, I don't know if that's the death knell to Capel's playoff chances. There's still, several weeks to go, but, with already having suffered losses to Hebron and to Louisville, teams that also have, one loss in district play. It's just the odds are, the number of winnable district games left that can, truly affect Capel's playoff chances. It means, you're likely going to have to score an upset over Marcus or Flower Mound at this point if you're them. So that was a tough setback. Louisville got a huge game out of stud receiver Armani Winfield, who, Justin Thomas was the one stringing that game for us, and he put in the story that Winfield changed his number from number 9 to number 4, and wouldn't you know it, he had 4 receiving touchdowns in that game. So, some nice little symmetry there for the Farmers as they picked up a nice little win of their own. That's a look at least kind of where things are at in 6-6A. Devin, I had a question over 11-6A. 10-6A was off this week, so and I saw you tweet about this. The transitive property kind of backfired because you had a scenario where Longview demolishes Rockwall demolishes Horn, so naturally Longview would lead Horn, but was it a field goal at the half?
Horn has been kind of Jekyll and Hyde here of late. You kind of have that sometimes when you have a younger quarterback and whatnot. Longview, Horn went toe-to-toe with us. It was a 20-20 game in the first half. Was able to hit Longview some big plays. Longview did kick a field goal, I guess, right before halftime to go up 23-20. But then Longview came out and established control. They outscored them 21-0 in the second half and win 44-20. But even in a loss, and at the end of the day, it was a blowout loss when you go down by 24. Some good things that you can pull for Horn, a team that did have his confidence shaken by getting blown out of the water by Rockwall. Yeah. But they weren't able to do it for 4 quarters. But to kind of prove that you can play with the reigning state champions, just gives them something to build on, especially going forward. Because we've talked about the meat of the schedule with some of these other teams coming up. Horn now has Longview and Rockwall in the rearview mirror.
The tricky part's done.
So Horn has put themselves and they have that ace in the hole, that win over Mesquite in the district opener that could be huge going forward. So now, if you're Horn, you just take care of business against the teams left in your schedule, and you're back in the playoffs.
How are you feeling about the rest of the way that playoff picture is shaping up in that district right now? Because as much parity as there is in that thing, how's that looking?
It could. you're looking at this week. It could be the pivotal game of the season with Mesquite and Tyler Lee.
Okay.
Mesquite is 6-1. I was out there on Friday night. They took care of North Mesquite. Great atmosphere. It was the 50th meeting between the schools. Big crowd on both sides. The Hall of Honor inductees were on hand and recognized. And just a big game for Mesquite. Darius Turner goes for 155 yards, 3 touchdowns. They really hit North Mesquite with big plays on both sides. They forced 6 turnovers. Dwayne Adams had 3 interceptions. Darius Turner had a 47-yard touchdown run. Dylan Hillard McGill had a 43-yard touchdown run and threw touchdown passes to Jadarian Smith for 91 and 39 yards.
Goodness.
He only completed 4 passes, but they went for 142 yards. So he was averaging 30 yards completion. Now they need that completion percentage to get a little bit higher, but it just shows kind of their big play capability. But now you got Mesquite sitting there at 2-1, and they play Tyler Lee, who's kind of been the surprise team.
Oh yeah.
They're 2-0. They're coming off a bye, but kind of when you look at the big picture, Longview's going to be there, and I don't see anybody beating Longview. They're going to be the undefeated district champions. Rockwall seems to have bounced back nicely since that loss.
Is Jackson still out?
No, he's back.
He's back.
He's
Okay.
back, and I think he had 3 touchdowns last week. So you
Of course he did.
You kind of pencil them into the number 2 spot. Well, that leaves Horn, Tyler Lee, and Mesquite right there. Assuming Rockwall, Heath, and North Mesquite don't catch fire, nothing against those teams, but you basically have 3 teams fighting for 2 spots. Well, Mesquite already has, lost the tiebreaker to Horn. So if they fall to Tyler Lee this week, that basically means even if they were to knock off Rockwall or Longview, they still have the tiebreaker. They still lose the tiebreaker to both their fellow contenders.
Yeah.
So I think when Jeff Fleener and that staff and that team are looking at Friday night as a playoff game. And if they win, they're in a really, really good position. But if they go, even though it's still early, there's still weeks left to go. But if they fall to 2-2 with those 2 losses being to their, the teams they're contending with, and then having Rockwall and Longview still on the docket, Mesquite's in trouble.
Yeah, that is very, very true when you frame it that way. All right, so we have some other developments over at the 5LL that we got to get to, and I'm sure we'll talk a little Lovejoy in the back half of the podcast, and that's a nice segue to our student athlete spotlight. Taylor had a chance to swing by Lovejoy to talk with their quarterback Ralph Rucker on the heels of a very dramatic victory over Frisco Reedy last week. We will see what Ralph had to say after a word from this sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
How's it going, everybody? Taylor Raglin out here at Lovejoy with Lovejoy junior quarterback R.W. Rucker. Coming off a big win over Frisco Reedy last week. 1 point. He led the game-winning drive to take down the Lions over there. So, before we get into all that, let's start with, I know you're a multi-sport guy, baseball guy, wrestling guy, a lot of hats around Lovejoy for you for sure. So, how does football kind of compare to those other sports, and how is it different for you?
Yeah, football is more, it's more of a team compared to the other sports. Baseball super individual. Wrestling obviously is very individual. But the way that we have to work together as a team and the way we got to push each other, like I can't do everything by myself. Reed needs me. I need Reed. It's all everyone working together as one to do a job and not just relying on one person.
It's your first year under center. Obviously big shoes to fill with Carson Collins, and I know you were in the secondary in your career to this point. So how's that transition gone for you, kind of being the guy under center, and what's been the best part of it?
Yeah, I was quarterback my whole life until actually this past year was first year I never played quarterback. But I knew what I had to do. I did some catching up to with Carson. Obviously learning the coverages and learning where to distribute on certain coverages and knowing what I need to do, which Carson in front of me mentored me and helped me through it, and I learned a lot from him.
You mentioned Reed Westervelt obviously has kind of been your go-to guy this season so far. He was the one that game-winning drive against Reedy. Yeah, I know you guys had like a 39-yard completion, then obviously the game-winning touchdown. So, how much has that relationship and kind of establishing that connection with him helped you transition quarterback here?
It's helped me a lot. Third down, and I got 6 to go. I'm going to Reed Westervelt. It's what we've developed through the games. We weren't always like this. Freshman football, me and Reed were not had the same thing we have now, but we've grown, and we're just doing our thing, I guess.
I mentioned last week, obviously a huge win for you guys over Reedy. I know they got you guys last season. That's a different program over there, but still a big win for you guys. Yeah. So, what was kind of going through your head that last drive under 2 minutes to go, no timeouts, down a score? What are you thinking, and how did you guys get it done?
Yeah, us juniors and seniors this year, we had some bittersweet taste in our mouth from last year, and we were going into the game that ain't going to happen. Going to that last drive, and we the first half we were good. The second half, we were struggling a little bit. But bring the guys together and say, hey man, this is it. This is what we have a job to do for not just us, but our families and our community. So let's get this done and stay calm, stay cool, and let's get this thing done.
Big win for postseason implications, and obviously a bunch of games left. Yeah. But how much momentum do you feel like that gives you guys getting that win and kind of getting off to a better start after? I know you had the win over the second-year program, but that loss to Braswell obviously stung. So how good was it to kind of get back on track against a real competitive program?
It felt good. I think it's what we needed, a little jump. Even though not everyone performed well. Obviously, our offense didn't perform as how we wanted, but our defense stepped up for us. And it just shows us that not everyone has to play perfect for us to get a W. And so it just shows how much we need to come together and let's build off this and let's go chase that district championship.
A couple big ones late in the year, but you don't want to overlook, especially a team like Princeton.
Yeah.
I know they've snuck up on a couple people and have been pretty competitive, even though they haven't really, gotten the wins to show for it. So what do you kind of expect out of Princeton, and what's kind of y'all's game plan?
Just sticking that last week we moved on. At 24-hour rule, celebrating the W, but getting back on track and keeping the main thing, and keep our head between the lines and do what we do.
What do you think is maybe the biggest matchup for you guys against Princeton? What do you think you guys match up well with them?
I think our receivers are going to play a lot of man coverage. I think, and our receivers are supposed to win. They're going to win. So that's the matchup we like, and that's the matchup we need for them to win.
I guess the last thing is, it's like I said, a lot of games left. Still a lot up in the air with the postseason picture, but getting a couple wins under your belt and feeling good. What's kind of the ceiling for this team? What's y'all's expectation?
We don't know yet. The ceiling's however high it could be, just wherever God takes us and however far we can work together as a team to get to.
Absolutely, man. Thanks, RW.
Yes, sir.
It's been RW Rucker out here at Lovejoy, quarterback for the Leopards. They'll take on Princeton this week. For now, we'll get back to the podcast.
Sir.
Big thanks to Ralph Rucker for taking the time to chat with Taylor for our Student Athlete Spotlight. Gentlemen, let's keep this rolling. Let's talk some 5A. And you know what? We can pick right up there with Lovejoy and talk a little 7-5A Division II, because that was certainly the most eye-catching result of the district schedule last week within 7-5A D2. Lovejoy 20, Frisco Reedy 19. Taylor, you were there. You were on the field when that touchdown was scored. Yeah. So what was just talk about the energy of that victory.
It was, the one thing that, talking to Rucker after that game, not even for the for the podcast today, was they really feel like that's kind of lit a fire under them and given them some momentum, in what's been a really up and down 7-5 AD2. Because now you look at Reedy with 2 losses. Lovejoy loses to Braswell, then beats Reedy. So that's a split with 2 postseason teams. Frisco is really the only sure thing in that district. If you're Lovejoy, and you come out of that game, winning a game that it for most of the time didn't look like you would, because it was a really strange game in that it was kind of like whoever got the last big swing of momentum was going to ride that and win. And it seemed like in the third quarter, Reedy got it when Jack Pruitt, I think it was, picked off Rucker and went like 74 yards for a touchdown. Reedy was up 16-10 or something like that, or 16-14. I think it was 16-14. Yeah, because then they kicked a field goal and then Lovejoy scored. So it looked like that had kind of deflated Lovejoy. Rucker eventually threw another interception in the fourth quarter, and then rebounded, obviously, with that last drive. They get the ball back with less than 2 minutes left, no timeouts. He leads them all the way down with his favorite target, Reed Westervelt. That's become a nice little duo for them.
Those two are great in 7-on-7 together.
Lovejoy is known, I guess, as kind of always having a nice crop of receivers, and Westervelt's definitely been the guy that's kind of risen up to be that go-to guy, that Bo Ivanelli or whoever it was, last season. But, man, I don't know. I mean, that's a great win for Lovejoy. Like I said, it's got to give them some momentum moving forward. But, they still got to beat some really good teams to get in the postseason. That Braswell loss is going to hurt. So, I mean, I'm curious to get your opinion on Reedy and Braswell, because I've I've thrown the book out the window with trying to pick games in this district anymore because it like Reedy's a very good football team. Braswell, it feels like even more than we thought. That group of like Reedy, Braswell, Denison, Lovejoy is just one big amalgamation of one-score teams, and that's been proven thus far. Lovejoy lost to Braswell by a score, beat Reedy by a point. Reedy to Frisco even. It's up in the air. That district is outside of the very top with Frisco and the very bottom with the Lake Dallases and even Princeton. I guess you could probably lump into that group. Princeton's probably the best of the bottom teams, I guess, by virtue of beating Lake Dallas, but it's totally up in the air.
Are you flabbergasted as well, Bryan Murphy?
On what? On Reedy? Or
just in general. Taylor really fired up.
We were warned before the season. Chad Cole said for the first time ever, this Reedy football team is overrated. That was his exact words. And it's
a nice quote.
It was, and he was not wrong. I mean, obviously. So you look at Frisco, Denison, Lovejoy, Braswell, Reedy. That's 5 teams. One of those teams isn't going to make the playoffs.
A really good team is not going to make the playoffs.
Yes, a really good team. A team with a winning record won't make the playoffs in this district. Frisco, they're a lock, most likely district champions.
Yeah.
I don't see anyone losing to them. They've already beaten Reedy and Braswell.
If they can clear Denison on Friday, then that'll be the last hurdle, essentially.
For sure. And so that game for Denison is really big there because that could push them back close to 4th or 5th next to Reedy. But, I mean, we're looking at it right now, and is Reedy going to be that team left out? I mean,
they do have the win over Denison, which does help.
They do, and all of their 4 of their 5 district games have been by 1 score. Even against Lake Dallas, and against Denison on the road. It's like, what is this team, man? Like,
Who are they?
Who are they? You can't figure them out.
Because it's wild, because at the same time, they could be undefeated in district, and you can argue they should be. Yeah. They were in position to beat both Frisco and Lovejoy inside the final minute.
Frisco, the first half, they got absolutely slaughtered.
They did.
And in the second
I would say
half,
especially that Lovejoy game.
I don't know what Reedy is, and I was at that Frisco game, and it makes no sense. And they could be undefeated. They could also be 1-4. Yeah, 1-4 right now in district play because they've played 5 district games already.
It's crazy.
Either way,
it's going to get even worse too because Lovejoy still has Denison and Frisco. Lovejoy ends with Frisco. There could be a scenario where Lovejoy's like, "Crap, we got to beat Frisco, to get in or to be whatever we want to be." But that's not out of the realm of possibility. I think Frisco goes undefeated just based on what they've shown, but.
After Braswell, Reedy has Lebanon Trail and Princeton, which we think would be 2 blowout wins, convincing wins. So that would put them at 5. I think if the magic number of wins is 5 really in this district.
If Reedy beats Braswell this week,
they're locked.
They're a postseason team, and all of this will be not forgotten. But I think we've been, just to kind of piggyback off what you said, I think we've been a little unfair to Reedy just based on what they were last year. They're just not the same team, but that doesn't mean they're bad. They're a very good
they're still a really good team.
They're just not...
Yeah, they're not going to go 4 rounds deep like they did last year.
The ghost of what they were last year has kind of lingered over everybody's expectations for them in probably a pretty unfair way.
And me and Cole have talked about it. It's it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. Yeah, that year was so awesome last year. It really set the standard, set the precedent. But then when most of those guys graduate, the next year you're going to go through some pains. It's like, what is this team?
Well, why aren't you this good again?
Yeah, why aren't you 14-0 and almost beating Aledo in the 4th round? What's wrong with you? Now you're losing to Lovejoy. And
speaking of pains, we can briefly touch on poor Lake Dallas. I mean,
they're done.
Not for long, I hope.
They're not making the postseason. I don't think at this point. It's impossible with that loss to Princeton, especially, and it's a shame because Brandon Engel has been so wishy-washy with his health, and it's kind of a what might have been, but I don't even think he would have saved them. I think they were just down from the beginning, maybe even more than we thought, just with youth and stuff. But Trevor Moon's been decent. He's coming back.
And he's the quarterback now. They're building for the future. He's a junior, so they're letting him run the show for the rest of the way.
Any longer, so you can look forward to some Trevor Moon growth potentially if you're a Lake Dallas fan, and that's about it. Unfortunately,
did they beat Memorial this weekend?
Yeah, stop it. Stop it.
So that's a segue for us to switch gears to the big boys in 7-5A.
Yeah, I got a nice little 3-horse race developing for the district title over in 7-5A D1.
And we had some undercover shout-outs. I'm sitting there talking to North. They did what they do. They won by 62 over Wiley East, beating them by 58 points or more for the second consecutive season after beating them 90-32 last year. And they like, why is that Devin Hasson guy act like we're not good enough to beat Poteet and John Tyler? Tell him to come to one of our games. So that's coming from Dylan Markowitz.
I mean, McKinney folks get so defensive, and they call us out. They've called me out.
kidding,
now they're
man.
calling Devin out, the nicest guy around.
Act like
But
you.
you know the common denominator is y'all calling out North and they be beating your team. I'm just saying. What happened during softball season? That ain't none of my business, though.
Well,
It's football season.
Focus on
Kendrick.
football
It's
right now.
Yeah.
And you know, these guys' heads were about to explode trying to get the district race, over there. No head explosions here. It's two very clear cut tiers.
Yeah.
I mean, McKinney North and John Tyler at 3-0, Poteet at 2-0, West Mesquite at 1-1. And the thing is, of that top four, only John Tyler and West Mesquite have played each other.
Yeah.
And that was a great game that saw West Mesquite had a chance to win at the end.
Wow.
And Tyler was intercepted with 14 seconds left, and John Tyler was able to escape 39-36. But like I say, the meat of the schedule is still ahead, and we have a lot of really good matchups to look forward to. Yes, I do think McKinney North will beat John Tyler. Dylan, I will see. We'll see about Poteet again. I think this is a Poteet team that's rounding into form. They got to an 0-3 start. They lost to Denton Ryan. Bad loss to Waxahachie, a 1-5 Waxahachie team, and then lost to a good Mansfield Summit team that's 5-1.
Hey, I'm on record. I called it. I told you, Poteet, McKinney North, district title, last game of the season.
But in those games, Seth McGowan, their outstanding running back, didn't play against Denton Ryan.
Yeah.
He only got 12 carries against Waxahachie and didn't play against Mansfield Summit. They got him back. Jalen Police, their quarterback, got some experience. He's a first-year starter. And since then, they beat Tyler Lee, a 5-1 Tyler Lee team, 19-14. Yeah. Took care of Sherman, took care of Texas High last week, 55-10. Since getting Seth McGowan back, he goes 26 for 175 and a touchdown against Tyler Lee, 22 for 211 and 2 touchdowns against Sherman, and then on 9 carries last week, 189 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, having him back has made a huge difference. Again, their defense is growing up. That's some younger guys there. The rest of their offense, again, with Jalen Police at quarterback, Tristan Golightly is really coming to his own on the outside. And again, I think they have McKinney North in the last game of the season. And I have said that's key because I think if they had McKinney North in the district opener, McKinney North likely wins that game. At the end of the season, I think Poteet, if they continue to improve the way they have these last 3 weeks, they're going to be at peak level, and then we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, definitely they're the class of the district, in my opinion. But a little undercover fact about North is, slowly but surely, their defense is getting respectable. Since getting 63 put on by Wakeland, they've given up 34 to Rockwall Heath, 28 to Sherman. They gave up 41 to Texarkana, but 30 of them were in the second half. They were up 48-14 at halftime, and they called the dogs off. And then against Wiley East, the 7 points was on a kickoff return. So they're getting where, basically, like I joke that you need 40 points just to compete with them. They're keeping people under 40, and if they can do that, they're poised for a district title in the long run. And a district title for North would be a big deal. They've not won as good as they've done in the playoffs and stuff over the years. Not even Ronald Jones' team that went to the regional finals have not won an outright district title. So they're very focused on that and on a mission.
That game can't get here soon enough. All right, let's close this out with a look at 5-5A Division I. Brian, you were
real big boys, Kendrick. This is where
this is where the number 1 team in the state resides. Yeah, Brian, you were all over this district last week. Want to talk about your game on Thursday though first, because that was our game of the week, Lone Star versus Independence, and we weren't really sure as far as how Independence would handle their first above-average defense seen this season, and hell, it might have been the best defense in Class 5A, but nevertheless, though, it was a rough awakening for Independence. So, what do you take away from that as far as what you learned about Independence and them having a bit tougher time moving the ball?
So about Independence, I mean, they got knocked in the mouth for the first time this season, and everyone's getting knocked in the mouth, by Lone Star. Braylon Braxton was running for his life all game long. He's been that dual threat guy, capable. He's been throwing 300, 400 yards a game, running for almost 100 yards a game. He averaged 1 yard per carry. In this one, they could not get their running game going. Lone Star, Coach Story, Kyle Story, the Independence head coach, he told me after the game, on the record, that this is the best Lone Star team he has seen them have. And Lone Star, they made the state championship game with Jason Shelley. They went 5 rounds deep with MJ Rivers before they lost to Mansfield Legacy, and so they played. Obviously Story saw him and played against those Lone Star teams. Lone Star last year made 3 rounds deep before they lost to John Tyler. But this team is different, man. Like, it's evident. Everyone's saying it. Story's not the only coach in 558 that's told me that. Man, they just don't have a weakness, and it's not a gauge for independence. Yeah, they'd been kind of cruising over some lesser teams, and even Story told me that, after the game as well on the record. He said, we haven't really played anyone yet. Our combined record for the teams we had played so far, I don't remember the exact record, but it was not good.
It wasn't great.
They've been playing a bunch of losing teams, and they've been blowing them out. But then they finally played a real contender, and they kind of got exposed. And he said that too. They really got exposed on some certain things, tackling, defensively, just a bunch of areas, and it'll help them in the long run, especially with them having Wakeland this week. That's a big one. So I think they needed this Lone Star game to kind of, hey, we're not just going to blow everyone out. We got to, face adversity and everything. But and I told Coach Rayburn, Lone Star head coach Jeff Rayburn after the game, I said, hey, man, I can't cover y'all's games anymore. It's because they're all over before the first quarter is even.
It's a quick night in the office for you, man. You can have that story done by the end of the third quarter.
And that's even with the Colony this week. That game's going to be over by halftime as well. Not even going to be close, man.
But with Rangel and them at you,
Rangel is my guy. But Miles Price won't be able to save them this time. I'm sorry. Miles Price is amazing. Miles Price is the second best player in this district, but Lone Star has the best. But it's not just him. They just don't have a weakness. Lone Star does.
Yeah.
They're absolutely loaded in every single position, and that's what the number one team in the state has to have. You can say, oh, it's the Marvin Mims show. He's 200 yards a game, 3 or 4 touchdowns a game. Garrett Rangel, this stud sophomore sensation coming in and putting up astronomical numbers. But no, their defensive line is massive. They send 3 guys. That's all they need, and they get pressure on the quarterback.
They run a 3-4?
They run a 3-4. Their secondary.
That's such a luxury.
Yeah.
and then when those guys get tired, they have 2 or 3 more guys they can rotate in with the second string. I've been told some of their second string could beat teams in the district. It's insane, absurd. They might have the best middle linebacker in the area right now, and Alessio Russolillo. Their secondary is, I think, the strength of the team. You can't throw on them. I haven't even mentioned Jalen Ford, who just committed to Utah, linebacker. Their offensive line gets no love, but they should. They have 3 returning starters. Their offensive line paves the way. What were you about to say, Devin?
No, I said here. I sense the jinx coming in, because if you get too high in a team, they end up getting bounced in the second round.
Next thing you know, you got Miles Price running the hook and ladder on you for the game-winning touchdown.
Flashbacks. No, that's not going to happen again this time, but I don't know what will happen in the playoffs. I'm just worried about. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I'm worried about them rematching with Highland Park. I think the way Highland Park
ahead to the state quarterfinals,
state championship. No, but I just no one's going to test them in the district, and that's Lone Star, man.
Because now, I mean, the script is the same heading into Friday against the Colony, which, it's Colony's undefeated, and they've been putting up some absurd offensive numbers, much like Independence has. Now, the Colony has been a bit more uneven than I think we anticipated. With even in victory, they're making it a little bit harder on themselves in some spurts. Obviously, we talked about the Centennial game that they, were able to squeak out there by 7 or whatnot. And then against Heritage, that was a game that was back and forth in the first half, and then the Colony shifts gears in the second and routs them.
It was 23-20.
Yeah.
The Colony were up with 1:35 left in the half. Ensuing kickoff right after Heritage scored. Miles Price takes it 87 yards. And then Heritage trying to
Don't kick it to that man.
No. Why does anyone kick it to Miles Price?
Kick it out of bounds. Kick it into the end zone. Just kick the damn thing out of bounds.
Yeah, you're better off just letting him start at the 30 or whatever. Yeah. And then, so he took a kickoff to the house, and then Heritage trying to make a play just before the half, trying to, because they'd been moving the ball against the Colony, which their defense has been sus. It has not been the defense that they had last year. People can score on the Colony this year. And then they throw a pick 6, and then that's when it kind of spiraled out, and the Colony had the momentum. And the Colony's a way better team than Heritage. There's not a debate there. But these games that are too close for comfort against Centennial and Heritage, and teams that they were blowing out last year, it's just not a strong sign that to show that the Colony is going to hang with Lone Star this year.
So are you going to drop that keyboard if you're in the press box on Friday and you see 21-14 halftime Lone Star over the Colony?
Ooh, if it's close, I don't know. We'll see. But I don't think it will be. But, I mean, this team has relied on Miles Price a little too much at times, and I've seen it firsthand. I know they have other studs. That's no.
Because I'm curious to see like the
secret,
as far as just individual matchups from Marvin Mims this season. I mean, Christian Gonzalez is committed to Purdue. He's one of the top cornerbacks in the in the state for that matter. Anxious to see how that kind of plays out because there are like it's again the talent is there. It's just for whatever reason the Colony has just been a little bit more Jekyll and Hyde quarter to quarter it seems this season than expected. But
well, Lone Star has more than Marvin Mims, so Independence they double teamed and triple teamed Mims the entire first half. And so what did Lone Star do? They went to Trace Bruckler.
Colony might not have to, though. That's the thing. That's what I'm getting at. They might not have to double treat him.
Christian Gonzalez can just man up Marvin
I don't
Mims.
know. That's the thing. I'm fascinated to find out. It should be juicy,
That's
though.
what I'm saying. If you try and the game plan is take out Marvin Mims, well, we're just going to go to our other stud receiver, or we're just going to run the ball down your throat. Like
it's a question of whether you have a guy that can at least hold his own one-on-one against him, so you're not having to afford that many more personnel just trying to slow down Marvin Mims. So, I don't know. Yeah, we kind of fancy this as the potential district title game at the start of the season, and we'll see if the Colony has anything in their bag for what has been an unstoppable Lone Star bunch. Last thing before we get out, did you see the last playoff team last week with Wakeland beating Little Elm?
No one expected that. I mean, Wakeland pretty much solidified themselves as a playoff team with that win. And Little Elm, granted, they've already gotten Lone Star and Wakeland out of the way. That game against the Colony is going to be really big later on. But man, that was a weird game. You don't see Ryan Watts get burned too often, but Kevin Rochelle beat him on a 27-yard touchdown. That kind of just summed things up. Even if when your best player is getting beat pretty good, and Little Elm just couldn't move the ball. It was just it was weird, and it was a statement win by Wakeland because they were fresh off that loss to Lone Star last week. They were really hungry. They really wanted to come out and get a statement win, and they got it. At Little Elm on the road, and we all picked Wakeland to win, but no one picked Wakeland to win by 1,000,000 the way they did. This game was never in doubt. So Wakeland pretty much solidified themselves as at least the 4 seed. Maybe the 3 seed with Independence's forfeiture.
We'll find out on Thursday. Yeah,
that's a big one.
Awesome. Plenty of fun stuff later on this week, including 5 games that are up for Game of the Week. You can go to our website, starlocalmedia.com, to vote on that, and we'll preview whatever the Game of the Week is, plus the other marquee matchups on Thursday. That'll do it for this episode of the podcast. Appreciate the entire crew for tagging along. Folks, you keep enjoying your week, and we will talk to y'all later.